Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back at it again to talk about the latest updates for the tuning that's coming in this coming week. It's going to be on, what is it, 10/7, 10/8? October 8th, where there's going to be a whole bunch of tuning notes and everything like that coming in. So we're going to talk about everything for healers right now. Starting it off with Resto Druid. This is about the third buff that Resto Druid's gotten in like 5 or 6 weeks, something along those lines. All healing is increased by 5%, and Cenarian Ward healing increased by 40% as their talent into, which is basically like places a buff on an ally. When they take damage, it starts triggering a healing over time effect. This is interesting that they get a third round of buffs coming into the spec since launch, because the spec was so badly down in the dumps. But I feel the biggest problem with Resto is still their overall design. It still feels like regrowth's super powerful relative to all your other spells. And so you're setting up all your other hots just to like buff regrowth and like make it better and all of that stuff, which is fine, but it's incredibly GCD intensive to the point where it doesn't really feel like you can cat weave or anything without instantly having to set up for all kinds of healing well in advance, even in dungeons. So I guess more healing will help somewhat, but I think that they really need to be looking more at like a redesign for 1105. But the big one is Preservation getting nerfed. Flame Shaper's Engulf healing, this is the direct healing to the target, has been increased by 20%, but Consume Flame, the cleave healing effect, has been reduced by 50%. This is a biblical nerf, since really you can see on the statistics page, the overall trend line for Mythic and Narrowbar Palace is that Consume Flame, good spell. And everybody stacking 2 Preservation Evokers and having... Look at this. This chart is actually crazy, because if you wanted to go back to, I want to say it's like 35 right here, a Mirdrasil, and then we go to 10.2 and look at the healing percentiles. Like, Monk was very far ahead. Let's not kid ourselves. It was really good in a Mirdrasil. But if you just compare this chart and this trend line, and then you compare it back to what Narrowbar Palace has, like the gap is just massive for what Prez is doing. So... plus side, they're directly nerfing the most overpowered ability there with Consume Flame, and Chrono Warden is unaffected. So like M+, for example, is unaffected, and like you still have like good builds and stuff like that for the spec. So I'm hoping that this is going to be... I really still think that Prez will be very strong after this, because you're still going to need ramp healers and high-end raid content. And Prez does it very efficiently. Like, their mana is insane. They also have like really good flexibility for when they can sort of like activate the engulfs. So I'm hoping that this doesn't fully kill Consume Flame. I kind of have a feeling that it's still going to be very good and just be like a more convenient ramp healer than Disc Priest, for example, than, you know, Resto Druid, for example. But we'll have to see. I would not be surprised to see it still have a lot of legs, though, and get hopefully just brought back a little bit closer down to earth. Mistweaver, Master of Harmony, which has notably been one of the worst hero talents, I think, for the healers to play with. The Stored Vitality causes an additional 40% healing and damage instead of 25%. And for Mistweaver directly, Coalescence now causes Aspect of Harmony to increase damage and healing taken by 30%. And the Aspect of Harmony now stores 30% of healing done instead of 20% healing done. This was like the super passive Thunder Focus T centric hero talent for Mistweavers that never really kind of got off the ground. Conduit of Celestials is the other hero talent, which is a lot more active, giving you like the bonus cast to like Enveloping Mist, providing shields, providing an additional cooldown. And so it's nice that they're going to do some more balancing to it. Personally, I would still enjoy playing Conduit of the Celestials, and I hope that's still going to be on top. Now, this one is a head scratcher. Holy Paladin got nerfed again. This is the second nerf in a row for Holy Paladins. Last time they had a 6% overall healing reduction. Now they have a 5% overall healing reduction. And so the weird thing about having an overall heal reduction is that, yeah, you could see on the chart, okay, like Paladin does lots of healing and they bring Devo and like, okay, wonderful. This is all really cool, right? But Paladin's healing, it feels like doesn't scale as well in a dungeon environment compared to others. Like, they're not like Disc Priest, which has a direct modifier to their, you know, dungeon healing. Like, Paladin doesn't really have that. And so having Sun's Avatar, the Herald laser beams kind of cutting through your entire raid for fat healing on all the areas where people can be stacked is awesome. But you don't have that sort of scaling going into a dungeon environment when you're only hitting, you know, 4 other people or something along those lines. So it's super, super strange that they're nerfing this directly instead of finding ways to nerf things that are more like raid focused or more like raid centric, like for example nerfing Sun's Avatar instead of your overall healing. We were doing Nexus Princess Kaiveza, and we would still have people bleed out to like the Queensbane dot, while a Paladin is actively Holy Shocking and Eternal Flaming them and all of that. So having an overall heal nerf for Paladins feels really, really messed up, especially for dungeon healing for Paladins. I think that's probably going to be the biggest hit for this change. And they're also making changes to Lightsmith, so when you extend the duration of your wings while you have the Awakening talent, it causes the Blessing of Forge to spawn a sacred weapon when the duration of your wings has been extended. So it's kind of just a good change on that one. Hammer and Anvil is the passive effect when you are hitting your judgments, your judgment crit strikes, causing that shockwave around the target, producing healing. The healing has gotten very buffed. Its radius is increased to 20 yards, and the healing effect in itself is increased by 150%. So they're really, really trying to push that additional output. And I wanted to see what we had out of Divine Guidance onto that one. I don't remember if I saw this one or we had looked over it before. But the effect has been increased. Oh, I think it's... I'm just going to search it on this one. Yeah. That's the additional proc effect. Oh, for each Holy Power ability cast, your next Consecrate deals damage or healing immediately split across all of them. Yeah. So they wanted to amplify that. It's kind of similar to like what Golden Path or anything like that. So I guess they're really trying to push more Lightsmith Paladins since like everybody and their mother was running with Herald. So I don't know if this is their way to try to like push Holy Paladins in a dungeon environment more towards Lightsmith. Since, like I said, the nerfs for Holy Paladin really heavily hit it for a dungeon environment compared to an M+, really heavily hit it for an M+ environment compared to a raid environment, where I think, Holy Paladin's still going to be strong as a healer, and it's still going to bring Devo and all that other fun stuff. So I don't know if this is them really trying to force people into playing Lightsmith as a result in a key environment. That's kind of my impression. But buffing your healing effects after you hit Judgment and then after you drop your Consecrate, it's strange, I guess you could say. It's like large bursts of like passive healing. So I don't know if I would say I'm too big of a fan of it. And honestly, I just love still playing Herald, and it feels kind of bad not having a good like way of scaling your healing from dungeons going into raids. So big old head scratcher. For Priest, no healer changes once again. Yeah. Resto Shaman got a couple nerfs coming into it. Acid Rain's damage being nerfed, which is a big old head scratcher on that one, since I still think Disc and even Preservation, even Holy Priest, I feel like a lot of other healers are doing more damage than Resto right now. Acid Rain does a lot of damage, but it's not like the spec plays super quickly or anything like that. So it's kind of odd when you don't have a lot of globals or free GCDs to produce a lot of damage, and then they start nerfing your base passive damage. Very, very strange. Actually, we can even look at the regular damage that we're seeing out of Resto Shamans in dungeons right now, because they show it, I think, in the tier lists, where they actually start going over like, oh yeah, here's how much damage that you're getting. Yeah, you're able to see like, oh, they're doing like 200k DPS, Disc is doing 320, Prez is doing 300. Like, it's not like, Resto Shaman was like middle of the pack. Yeah, it was like middle of the pack. Now, I'm not saying they need to buff or say they need to nerf Disc and Prez damage, but like, Shaman was fine. It's in this like second tier of damage dealers. Actually, the bottom 4 are all fine. This is actually pretty good variance. The big variance is actually coming from Prez and from Disc Priest, at least according to Archon's data on this one. Like, I don't understand it. Very strange. Earthen Harmony causes Earth Shield to reduce damage taken by 3% instead of 5%. This, I don't know, kind of a big head scratcher. In a world where you don't have a tank external or a regular like tank external to put onto tanks, and tanks are taking more damage than ever before, having like perma DR felt like a pretty good trade-off. So kind of weird that's the thing that gets nerfed, especially considering the fact that the spec has been so dominant in like an overall M+ environment. And I wouldn't say it's like too terribly far behind like Paladin as an example. Plus it's also bringing all the different stamina to the table. So it definitely seems like from these notes, some people get kind of handled with like kitten gloves and they're fine. And then of all the things, there's not really any changes to priest, which is basically in line. Like Holy and Resto are basically in line with each other for the stats for all the mythic fights we've seen thus far. And Resto's getting buffed and no changes coming in for either disc or Holy. Super, super strange under that. I think what you're probably going to end up seeing, especially from like a meta perspective, especially in like a key environment, is that if these lightsmith buffs are not that strong, or if it doesn't like if it does not feel good like running lightsmith in dungeons, you might see Holy Paladin like fall off pretty hard, and then you might see like Mistweaver stay higher, Prez continue to go higher. I think you might see like Disc and Mistweaver around the A tier, Prez and Shaman around the S tier, and then kind of everybody else at like B tier. That's kind of my prediction at the moment. The Resto Druid buffs and stuff are sure going to help in like a dungeon environment, but it still takes an enormous amount of time with how the spec is designed to actually set up your healing to the point where it feels like you can't really do much damage. Like with this breakdown, Resto Druid's like near the bottom with damage, but I feel like if they actually had time to do damage, it would be much higher. It just takes so much work and effort to actually set up your healing. I think Mistweaver will be pretty underrated, and it could be like an A tier healer though, because you can kind of just easily muscle heal through a lot of content, and your kick, stun, interrupt, crowd control, all that stuff seems really good. Like it's good that they didn't get any like nerfs or anything like that. They're just actively trying to make Master of Harmony better, which is good because I mean nobody was running that talent or the hero talent, and it was bugged for quite a bit of beta as well. So we'll see. Things I definitely want to see on my list going forward is some buffs to disc, because I think that they very much need it, especially for a raid environment where it feels like it takes way more work to set up burst healing, especially compared to Prez. Kind of surprised that there's not any sort of like incoming announcement about how they might shuffle around Holy Priest healing when you have certain talents which do like nothing like Prayer of Healing, but we'll have to see going forward. These are the incoming notes that are going to happen once again on 10/7 or 10/8 on October 2nd with the incoming reset. We'll see, and I'll also have some more updates coming in for where I think some of the other meta rankings and things like that are going to be changing as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope y'all enjoyed it, and I'll catch y'all next time.